By 1944, the skies over Europe were thick with bombers and the ground soaked with blood. Yet hidden beneath the thunder of artillery was another war, silent, invisible, and just as deadly. While millions of soldiers clashed across continents, a handful of men were preparing to fight using nothing but illusion, trickery, and performance. Their battlefield would not be marked by craters, but by shadows and echoes, where every sound and shape could decide the fate of thousands, and where deception itself became a weapon more powerful than any gun. Deep inside Allied command, strategists realized that fooling the enemy could save more lives than frontal assaults ever could. And so a classified unit was formed under an innocent name, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. Its purpose was never to hold ground or charge enemy lines, but to create the appearance of massive forces where none existed, pulling German troops away from real attack routes and leaving their defenses fatally thin when it mattered most. Instead of hardened infantry, the Army searched art schools, advertising agencies, radio studios, and theater workshops, recruiting painters who could shape light and shadow, sculptors who understood form, sound engineers who could recreate the thunder of armies, and actors who could play officers with convincing authority. These were men trained to imagine realities and then sell them as truth, now dressed in uniforms and sent to war with the responsibility of saving entire divisions through performance. At secret camps, the recruits learned to inflate tanks in minutes, position fake artillery to cast realistic shadows, study military organization so they could speak fluently about non-existent battalions, and operate heavy sound equipment under combat conditions. They memorized insignias, ranks, and unit histories, becoming living encyclopedias of fake armies, capable of stepping into villages and spreading rumors so convincing that German informants would carry the lies straight back to enemy intelligence. As D-Day approached, the Ghost Army joined the massive Allied deception effort designed to convince Hitler that the main invasion would strike at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. While real troops prepared to storm the beaches, phantom divisions were built across England, complete with inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, and constant radio chatter, helping lock German forces in the wrong locations during the most critical days of the war. After the beaches were secured, the Ghost Army followed close behind advancing Allied troops, setting up illusions just miles from enemy lines. Under cover of darkness, they unpacked entire armored divisions from trucks, transforming empty fields into military strongholds by dawn, knowing that if German patrols discovered the truth, they would be treated not as soldiers but as spies, and executed on the spot. Camouflage artists reshaped landscapes with nets, false tracks, and carefully placed silhouettes that looked real from both ground and air. Tank tread marks were dragged through mud to simulate heavy traffic, campfires were lit and extinguished on schedules matching real troop behavior, and supply dumps were carefully staged, all designed to trick not only cameras, but human eyes scanning through binoculars. From trucks fitted with massive speakers, the Ghost Army broadcast recorded sounds of armored columns, shouting soldiers, bridge construction, and vehicle repairs, synchronized to terrain and weather, so echoes traveled naturally across valleys and forests. German listening posts reported major troop movements, never realizing the thunder they heard was coming from machines operated by a few dozen men hiding in the trees. Meanwhile, radio operators transmitted endless streams of fake communications, copying the personalities and habits of real commanders so precisely that German code analysts became convinced entire divisions were shifting positions. Orders were issued, acknowledgments returned, and operational debates played out over the air, creating the illusion of massive coordinated movements that existed only in invisible airwaves. Sometimes deception required face-to-face performance, and Ghost Army soldiers posed as officers in cafes and towns, loudly discussing fake troop deployments where spies were likely to listen. They wore incorrect insignia on purpose, dropped false documents, and allowed themselves to be overheard, turning everyday conversations into carefully scripted intelligence traps. German artillery began shelling empty positions, wasting precious ammunition on inflatable targets, while Allied troops advanced through weakly defended sectors. Entire German units were redirected toward threats that did not exist, and when the real attacks came, resistance was often thin, confused, and poorly positioned to respond. Operating so close to enemy lines meant constant danger. Patrols passed within yards of hidden speaker trucks, and searchlights swept over fake tank parks where only rubber and rope stood between success and disaster. Every operation balanced on silence, timing, and luck, because exposure would not only kill the unit, but compromise entire Allied battle plans. One of the Ghost Army's greatest triumphs came during the Allied push into Germany, when they staged a massive fake river crossing miles away from the real assault point. Inflatable boats, sound effects of bridge construction, and endless radio chatter convinced German commanders to rush defenses to the wrong sector, allowing American forces to cross the Rhine with far fewer casualties than expected. Beyond physical deception, the Ghost Army's work attacked enemy morale, creating confusion, exhaustion, and paranoia within German command structures. When every movement might be fake and every report unreliable, hesitation crept in, slowing reactions and weakening resistance, proving that fear and doubt could cripple armies as effectively as bombs. Every illusion was coordinated with real Allied operations, making deception an integrated weapon of war rather than a side act. High-level commanders relied on Ghost Army reports to shape battlefield movements, trusting that false armies would shield real ones during critical advances. Several operations nearly ended in disaster when German units advanced toward illusion sites, forcing rapid evacuation under cover of darkness. Inflatable tanks were slashed, speakers abandoned, and men slipped through forests carrying only personal weapons, leaving behind ghostly evidence of armies that vanished before enemy eyes. While they rarely fought directly, Ghost Army soldiers lived with the stress of knowing that any mistake could lead to torture or execution. Their courage was quiet, their victories invisible, and their sacrifices measured not in medals, but in lives saved elsewhere on the battlefield. When Germany surrendered, the Ghost Army disbanded quietly. No parades, no public records, no stories told. Only orders to forget what they had done. Their war vanished into classified files, buried beneath decades of secrecy. For years, wives and children believed these men had worked in ordinary support units, unaware that their fathers and husbands had helped shape major Allied victories. The silence weighed heavily, but duty demanded secrecy long after the guns fell silent. Decades later, declassified documents revealed the truth, and historians pieced together how often German commanders had been fooled by phantom armies. What sounded like movie fiction turned out to be a decisive factor in speeding the Allied advance and reducing casualties. Museums began displaying inflatable tanks and sound equipment, finally honoring men whose weapons were creativity and courage. Their story reshaped how warfare itself was understood. Not just brute force, but perception could determine outcomes. Modern military deception units trace their roots to the Ghost Army, now using digital signals, drones, and cyber illusions, but guided by the same principle. Control what the enemy believes, and you control how they fight. Across Europe, battles were fought against forces that were never there, entire strategies shaped by shadows that dissolved overnight, leaving behind only tire tracks and fading echoes of engines that never ran. In a war remembered for destruction, the Ghost Army stands as proof that intelligence, imagination, and bravery can win battles without firing a shot, turning art into armor and sound into shields. They were soldiers who became ghosts, artists who became warriors, and men who changed history without leaving footprints. Their greatest success was never being seen, and in that invisibility, they helped bring the deadliest war in human history to an end.